So this inspired you then to create board games?
That's right. The first game that we produced was called Xtronaut. It's actually behind you on the shelf there if you want to grab it.
You started it on Kickstarter?
That's right. So we released Xtronaut, the game of solar system exploration, on Kickstarter in 2015. So we were still in development on OSIRIS-REx. We hadn't got to the launch pad yet. And this game tries to capture that experience. You mentioned that you play this with your family.
Yes, we love it.
And there's a lot of competition that's involved.
Yes.
That kind of goes back to our conversation about these missions are competitively selected, right? Not everybody's guaranteed to get to the launch pad and to get into outer space, and Xtronaut tries to capture that.
Calm down. Calm down.
You're being silly. Dad,
Listen, wait, time out.
Dad's on the card.
Listen, wait.
Joe, you're being tricky. Okay,
Listen,
that's your
stop. Now you just touch
Do
him.
you have any on your lap? Any other
I'm looking at this.
Okay.
Yes. All right, I get to play another card.
So, and it's also a little bit political, as you can imagine. When you're starting to spend the kind of money that we're spending, people are paying attention and other people want access to that budget.
I'm sure.
So there might be things that happen. Either there's higher priorities or there's people who think that their mission is more important. And so there's ways for the players to influence the likelihood of success of another team.
And there's external factors too. I'm sorry to interrupt. Just
Sure.
the government shutdown.
That's right.
The dreaded card.
Yeah, that's right. It is a dreaded card. We've worked hard to try to get that mechanic to work in the game. Early versions of it, it was actually really harsh.
Government shutdown.
And it was as frustrating as actually trying to work through a real government shutdown.
I imagine.
But we tried to soften it in the game as we move forward to still make it a valuable piece of the game, but not quite so frustrating. So that's a lesson learned. Just like a spacecraft, a board game requires a design and then a test and then an evaluation of where there might be ways to improve it. And in fact, now that Xtronaut's been out there for 5 years, we have a lot of feedback from our players. So we're getting ready to release Xtronaut 2.0.
So what are the changes here?
Good question. So one of the biggest comments we got from our game players was that they really wish that this could get up to 6 players.
Yes.
So Xtronaut 2.0 takes the 4-player version of Xtronaut and expands it to a total of 6 players. That required some changes to the way the game works. One of the things people like about Xtronaut is the trading amongst other players. That really slows things down at the 6-player level so the game can go on for hours. You can still do that in Xtronaut 2.0, but we offer you a market trading system that actually speeds the game up to make things
like the
move.
downlink game.
Yeah, exactly, like our other product, Downlink. We've improved the graphics. I think if you take a look at the two games kind of side by side, we really made Xtronaut 2.0 a nicer looking product, not only just on the box, but on the game boards. Each player has their own board. Which
The
looks
game boards are really nice for this one. Did you update it?
Yeah. Let's take a look at what the new game boards look like on Xtronaut 2.0. So we really wanted to capture the feel like you are building a rocket at a real launch complex. So every game board is a real launch complex, either at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station or at Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is where we launch rockets from the United States. This is Space Launch Complex 40, where the Falcon rockets launch. So you can see here a Falcon on the launch pad getting ready to launch a NASA mission into space. So that is the biggest change that we made, was really to the look and the feel of the boards.
Yes.
We also noticed that players were going over 10 points quite a lot. We wanted a way to record that, so we increased the scale for keeping track of your points. And then we do have the updated round of play here, which involves our new action cards. So one of the best parts of the game are the ways that the actions can be used to influence play. So we added a bunch of new ones into the game.
Did?
So there's 14 total actions versus the 7 that were in the original Xtronaut.
Wow.
So there's things that you can do to help yourself, like a mass reduction card, which increases the delta V capability of your spacecraft. Concept study, which allows you to look at 5 cards from the top of the deck and pick the one that is most valuable. We're proud of our international partnerships on OSIRIS-REx, so you can develop an international partnership to increase the scientific value, and many other new actions in the game.
Wow.
Including 2 natural disasters. So, we talked about changes to the climate earlier in the video. So things like wildfires are common occurrences in California. So if the
Yes.
wildfire card comes out, we actually have to roll the dice, and you may take some damage to your rocket that's sitting on the launch pad.
Oh, wow.
If it's in Vandenberg Air Force Station, there's also a hurricane card, which can hit Cape Canaveral and also potentially damage some of your components there.
I just want to know, what made you think, you're in the middle of a mission here and you're teaching here, what made you think, I'm going to add a board game, creating a board game?
Well, I've always loved playing board games. It's been a hobby of mine since I was a kid. I spent hours and hours and hours playing board games. And I'm an educator.
Perhaps it was influential, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of value in board games in education. And I know as a homeschooler that you're interested in using these products in your homeschool program. And in fact, I wanted to ensure that this mission was more than just about the science, that we're spending United States taxpayer dollars on this program. And I wanted to make sure that we were giving back to society, not just in the United States, but all around the world. These programs are true missions of exploration. They're out there seeking knowledge, but it has a direct impact on society. And particularly young people, they look at what we're doing in these missions and they get inspired. They want to be part of something like that. And I thought, well, if we could put this into a board game, then kids could build their own rockets and go to destinations across the solar system and have that joy of exploring. But also, there's a lot of knowledge that you learn. First of all, there's the whole social component. I'm sure you guys struggle with screen time. Right? Kids these days are on screens a lot, and we worry about their lack of social interactions. When you're playing a board game, it's a very social event. You're there around the table. It's about the game, but it's also about the people, right? You want to enjoy the people that you're playing with. It's a chance to be with your friends or your family and have a good time and share each other's company. But there's also some really fundamental skills that you pick up. You know, there's strategy that you have to develop.
Yes.
You know, I have principles of good games, and one of them is that the strategy needs to be complex enough that you can try a strategy and see how it works. And if it fails, then you can reevaluate and deploy a different strategy next time you play the game. So that's an incredibly valuable skill in life, right? You're trying to figure out how to solve a problem. And if your first solution doesn't succeed, that doesn't mean that you give up, right? So you're like, okay, I tried that, it didn't work, I want to regroup, I want to come back, I want to play this game again, and I want to try a new strategy and see if I can win using this different technique. So that's really what we call one of the principles of game-based learning, right? So, and I teach a class on this here at the University of Arizona, where we study these principles. How do you use games in educational programs? And what is the value of putting content like this into a game kind of format? The kinds of things I was talking about are true for any kind of good game, right? You could be playing a game that's about dragons or, you know, about space battles. The one thing we try to do with Xtronaut is we try to put in real, accurate science content so that you're learning something without even knowing that it's happening, right? You're playing the game, you're involved. You know, I have a quote from somebody on Twitter who was a 7th grade science teacher, and he heard the students talking about needing the second stage booster for an Atlas rocket, and they were looking for the left fairing on the Falcon. And those are real rockets, and those are real components, and that's how we really get spacecraft off the surface of the Earth and into the solar system. That's the kind of knowledge that they're going to retain, and they're going to watch a launch and like, oh wow, there goes an Atlas V rocket, just like I built in Xtronaut.
Yes, and I really appreciate that you don't kind of dumb anything down for the children. This is very educational. I love hearing my kids talk about even constellations. This is another game. Was this the second one?
That was our
did?
second game, yep.
Yes, they are so excited about this. And like I said earlier, my younger children, even just 5 years old, they're learning counting by creating these constellations. And this glows in the dark. We did that. We turned off all the lights when we were done. It was so cool. So I like how you've kind of carried your 3 pillars over: the scientific integrity, because it is all very true to the science.
That's right.
And the budget, all of that, and the advanced play, you have that where you can deduct points if you go over. So the goal is to really be accurate, to have the right amount of resources.
That's right. We have that in constellations as well. As you noticed, the more accurately you place the constellation in the night sky, the more points you score.
Yes.
And if you do it absolutely perfectly, graphically, you'll get a true map of the night sky where all the constellations are in the
That is really
positions.
fun.
relative
How
to
did you
each other.
get this idea?
So this started out in partnership with another game designer, Ian Zhang. We met through Xtronaut, actually through the Kickstarter website where we launched all of our games. And Xtronaut 2.0 will be going on Kickstarter at the end of
Nice.
February of this year. And Ian came back and said, I have an idea for a game about constellations. And I was like, that sounds great. And so we started working together. He actually has some design blogs on the internet where you can read through the process that we went through.
Nice.
The early designs, just like a spacecraft or a space mission, didn't look anything like the final product. It's all about design, test, evaluate, and redesign. And we went through many iterations. It was a really nice partnership. He's got a lot of experience in game design. I learned a lot from him. You know, and I was there representing scientific integrity. He'd come back with a change that would make the gameplay more easy, and so the game would flow. And we would argue about, is that scientifically accurate or not? I didn't want to put anything into the game that wasn't scientifically accurate. So if we're going to make a rule change, we had to have a reason scientifically why you would be able to do that. And he embraced that challenge, and he came back with, okay, this is what it means. The best example in constellations is the 3-for-1 rule. You probably noticed, right? If you collect 3 stars of one type, it can substitute for another one. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. I said, how could you take 3 M stars and make an O star? And he's like, well, let's look at it, and it represents the time the astronomer has spent characterizing these stars. You could allocate that time to discovering this other object. And I was like, I like that. So we're going to go ahead and accept the rule, because he was right.
Yeah.
We needed it to make the game work properly. But I wanted to make sure that we had a scientific reason why you would do that.
Oh, that's so funny. And then your third pillar is schedule, right? So did you when you put these games out, do you have a schedule in mind and goals like that to have it out at a certain time?
Yeah, we've gotten pretty good at understanding all of the steps in the process, and it's a bit of work to get a product like this all the way through design, test, manufacturing, and distribution to our backers, and then now they're available on Amazon for people to purchase. So we run a small business. I'm a professor, I lead a NASA mission, but I also have a small company.
Yes.
I have a partner, Mike Lyon, who has been great in helping me understand how a business operates and the kinds of agreements that you have to put in place, and making decisions that are, most effective. There might be things that I want in the game, but they're going to add weight to the box, and that means it's going to cost more to ship it. And so we have to think about those things when we're designing a game. What is the most efficient way to package it so that you maintain the quality of the product, but it's also reasonable from your distribution perspective?
Now, were you surprised by the outcome on Kickstarter, the response that you got? Because it seemed overwhelmingly positive. People loved it.
Yeah, I really love the Kickstarter game community. It's a great place. People were very supportive. I mentioned that I met Ian through that platform, also Ben Schulman. If you go back to the original videos from Xtronaut in 2015, you see that it was at a very early stage of design. I had an idea.
Yes.
The graphics were just me playing around on my computer, grabbing clip art off the internet about what I wanted the things to do. Ben reached out and said, hey, it looks like you could use some help on the graphic design. I'd like to support what you're doing. And the community overall, they're very constructive, and it was great. We raised enough money to get the first printing out there, and it kind of launched the whole concept of Xtronaut games.
So what advice would you have for teens, kids that are thinking, I would love to do something like that? You mentioned, it sounds like just kind of do it. Just start it, and then everything will kind of come together, the resources, the people. Is that fair to say? Or
yeah, I mean, we live in a day and age where you can get your ideas in front of thousands of people very quickly.
Yes.
And so you gotta be passionate about what you're doing. I think you can tell I really love space exploration, but I also really am invested in education and building products that are gonna help kids get excited about science and math and engineering. And so make sure you believe in what you're doing, right? And get your enthusiasm out there, and people will respond, and they'll say, hey, that sounds like a great idea. Board games are very cost effective to design. I mean, you can design a board game with almost no money involved, because you can make the components out of paper, right? Everybody's got dice in their house probably, so you can start to develop your idea. The biggest challenge of a game is the mechanics. How does the game work, right? How are the players going to interact with each other? What strategy do you think the players are going to need to employ in order to win the game? And then once you get into production, that's kind of what Kickstarter is there for. It gets you the budget so that you can get your graphics done, then you can get to the factory, you can get print runs done. You can print single copies of games when you're doing a prototype for like $30 or $40. You can get a print with game boards and cards, and you can start to see what the game is going to look like. And I can tell you, there's no better feeling than when you get that first copy from the factory and the product is complete, and you can say, wow, we made this, right? And this is something that we can be really proud of. And to all of the Xtronaut players out there, post pictures of you guys playing these games. We love to see them. We love to hear about the fun you're having, the educational experience, and any ideas that you have for new rules you've invented. I love to hear player house rules, ways that they can change the game. We've incorporated those into Xtronaut 2.0, where people have said, hey, we made the game more fun by changing the rule in the following way. And I'm like, I really like that idea. I think if we revise the game, I'm going to add that into the next version.